Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
This time you've given us a really fascinating
Oh, yeah.
and challenging set of excerpts from Derek Parfit's Reasons and Persons.
That's a good one.
So we're going to dive deep into his exploration of personal identity, rationality, and even how those connect to morality.
Big questions.
Huge questions.
Yeah,
Get ready for some real mind-bending thought experiments.
for sure.
And a new way of looking at what makes you over time.
Well, I think listeners are in for a treat with Parfit.
Absolutely.
His work is like really a cornerstone in modern philosophy. And he challenges so many of the assumptions that we just kind of take for granted.
Yeah.
Like the idea that acting in our own self-interest
Oh, yeah.
always leads to the best outcomes.
Right. It's like so intuitive.
Yeah.
Like, of course, we want what's best for ourselves,
Yeah.
but Parfit really digs into that.
He does. He really picks that apart.
Yeah, he calls it the self-interest theory, I believe.
That's right.
And argues that it's not always so straightforward.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He gives some really interesting examples, like, the idea of making threats that you don't intend to carry out,
Okay.
but then finding yourself having to follow through
Oh,
just to maintain credibility
I see.
or to avoid looking weak.
Okay, so, like, if I threaten to quit my job,
Yeah,
every time I don't get my way,
right. Exactly.
eventually people will stop taking me seriously.
Yeah, they'll call your bluff.
And I might actually lose my job.
Exactly. And that's what he calls an indirectly self-defeating action.
Okay.
So, in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like you're acting in your self-interest,
Yeah.
but ultimately the consequences are negative.
I see.
Yeah,
So it's like, you get that short-term win,
right.
but then it kind of backfires in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah.
This reminds me of the prisoner's dilemma,
Oh, yeah, good connection.
where, two people acting rationally
Right.
in their own self-interest
Yeah.
end up with a worse outcome
They both lose.
than if they'd cooperated.
Yeah. It's a classic example of that.
Is Parfit getting at something similar here?
Absolutely. He's really challenging that traditional view of rationality.
Okay.
It's not just about maximizing your personal gain
Mm-hmm.
in every single interaction.
Right.
It's about considering the long-term consequences
I see.
and the potential for these kind of unintended outcomes.
Right. It's like thinking ahead
Exactly.
to how your actions now will play out.
Exactly. And he even suggests
Yeah.
that sometimes it might be rational to intentionally make yourself more likely to act irrationally.
Wait, that's like a paradox.
It is. It's a real head scratcher.
How can that be?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine someone who has a reputation for always following through on their threats.
Okay.
No matter how extreme or crazy they might seem,
Okay.
that perceived irrationality,
Yeah.
that willingness to go to any lengths,
Okay.
can actually become a strategic advantage.
So, like, if everyone knows that you're unpredictable,
That's exactly
it might just, like, burn everything down.
right.
They'll be less likely to cross you.
Exactly. You don't want to mess with that person.
Yeah. You turn your irrationality into some kind of power move.
It's a strange kind of power, but yeah.
It's like reverse psychology or something.
In a way, yeah.
Wow.
So Parfit forces us to rethink
Yeah.
what it means to act rationally.
Right.
Is it about just sticking to logic and self-interest?
Mm.
Or is there room for this kind of calculated,
Yeah.
even seemingly irrational behavior
Okay.
to achieve a certain goal?
It's a whole different way of thinking about it.
It really is.
Okay. So we've got this challenge to the self-interest theory.
Right.
And then Parfit throws in another curveball.
Oh, yeah. He keeps them coming.
This idea of blameless wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a contradiction.
It does, doesn't it?
But his example of Claire, the dedicated writer,
Right.
really highlights this concept.
Yeah, she's a great example.
Yeah, so she's so devoted to her craft
Oh.
that she knowingly makes choices that are harmful to her well-being.
Like pushing herself to exhaustion,
Yeah.
neglecting her health,
Right.
all in the pursuit of creating great art.
Right. And Parfit argues
Yeah.
that her actions could be considered blameless.
Yeah, because the ultimate outcome,
Mm-hmm.
her brilliant work,
Right.
outweighs the negative impact on her personal life.
Okay.
It's a consequentialist view.
I see. So it's like the ends justify the means, kind of?
In a way, yeah, it's about looking at the overall good
Yeah.
that's produced.
It's a tough one to wrap your head around.
It is.
Because, intuitively we want to say that harming yourself
Right, of course.
is always wrong.
Yeah.
But Parfit seems to be suggesting
Yeah.
that maybe the ethical calculation isn't so simple.
Yeah, there's more to it.
We need to look at the overall consequences,
Exactly, the bigger picture.
not just the immediate impact on the individual.
Exactly.
It's a lot to consider.
It is, and we're just getting started.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So this idea of imperceptible harms.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's another example where Parfit challenges our usual ways of thinking about ethical actions.
Definitely.
So he uses the example of 1,000 altruists,
Okay.
each adding a tiny amount of water
Right.
to a cart meant for wounded men.
Okay.
So each individual action is like insignificant,
Right, just a drop in the bucket.
but collectively, they could lead to the cart overflowing
Oh.
and harming the very people they're trying to help.
Wow, yeah, that's a powerful image
Right.
of how small actions can have big unintended consequences.
Ain't that saying, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. And for want of a horse, the rider was lost.
Exactly, it's all connected.
Right. So it highlights how even tiny actions, even with good intentions, can have these huge unintended consequences.
And Parfit's point is that we need to factor those in,
Right.
even if they're not immediately apparent when we're thinking about whether something is right or wrong.
So it's a call for greater awareness to
Absolutely.
the interconnectedness
Yeah.
of our actions and their ripple effects.
Precisely.
This is already making me reconsider how I think about my own choices and their impact,
It's powerful stuff.
even in small ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that Parfit then connects these ideas
He does.
about rationality and morality to the even bigger question
Oh, yeah.
of what makes us who we are over time.
Personal identity.
Our personal identity.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah, he asks, like, what makes you the same person you were 10 years ago or even yesterday?
It's a fundamental question, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
is it your body, your memories, something else?
Yeah, what is it that makes you you?
And he uses all these different thought experiments
He does. He's famous for them.
to challenge our conventional understanding of personal identity.
Yeah. They really make you think.
Yeah, these thought experiments are where things get really mind-bending,
Buckle up.
like the new scanner,
Okay.
where your brain is scanned and replicated on another planet.
Oh,
Or the combined spectrum, where your cells are gradually replaced.
fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and through these scenarios, he explores different criteria for personal identity.
Like the physical criterion,
Right.
which focuses on the continuity of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So if your body stays the same, you're the same person.
Okay.
And then there's the psychological criterion,
Okay.
which emphasizes the continuity of your mind and memories.
So, like, if you have the same memories and thoughts,
Exactly.
then you're the same person, even if your body has changed.
That's the idea.
But then he introduces this concept
Yeah.
called Relation R.
Ah.
Relation R.
Which doesn't neatly fit into either of those categories.
Right, it's a whole other way of thinking about it.
Okay.
It's all about psychological connectedness and continuity,
Okay.
but it doesn't require a single continuous self.
You okay?
It suggests that what matters is the overlaps and connection
Mm-hmm.
between different stages of our lives,
Okay.
even if there's no single unchanging me throughout.
That's a really interesting idea. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like these connections, these psychological threads that weave through different stages of our lives.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
That's what matters more than having like a fixed, unchanging self.
Right. It's about the relationships and the continuity.
And the experiences.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, bring on the mind bending.
Let's do it.
So this Relation R really has me thinking about what it means to be a self over time.
That's a big one.
Yeah, like it's not just about having the same body
Right.
or even the same exact memories. It's more about these connections.
Yeah, these threads that kind of run through our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to illustrate this, Parfit uses one of the most famous thought experiments in philosophy,
Okay,
the branch line case.
hit me with it.
So imagine your brain is split
Okay.
and each half is transplanted into a new body.
Whoa.
So now there are two people walking around, both with your memories, your personality, everything.
It's like a philosophical version of the Prestige.
I like that analogy.
So which one is the real you, or are they both somehow you?
Right. That's the question.
Yeah.
It gets right to the heart of what we mean by personal identity.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And Parfit uses this case to distinguish between personal identity,
Yeah.
the idea of a single continuous self,
Mm-hmm.
and psychological continuity,
Okay.
where those important connections and relationships persist even when traditional identity is unclear.
So in the branch line case,
Yeah.
there's no longer one single you,
Right.
but both individuals share a psychological continuity with the original person.
Exactly. They both have that relation R going on.
Does that mean they both have an equal claim to being you?
That's a good question.
even if neither one is identical to the original.
It's one of the things Parfit wants us to think about.
Yeah. Is personal identity really the most important thing, or is it these psychological connections that matter more?
It's a shift in perspective.
It really is.
Yeah, from focusing on a fixed self to looking at the web of relationships and experiences that connect us.
And it's not just theoretical either.
Right.
You mentioned split brain patients earlier.
Yeah, those cases are fascinating.
These are real people who have had their brain hemispheres surgically separated,
That's rare.
resulting in two distinct streams of consciousness.
It's like two minds in one body.
It's incredible to think that there are people out there who essentially have two sets of thoughts and feelings, even intentions happening simultaneously.
It challenges our whole idea of what it means to be a single, unified self.
Does that mean they have two distinct identities residing in the same body?
Again, that's the kind of question Parfit wants us to consider.
He's really pushing the boundaries here.
He is.
So does personal identity in the traditional sense really matter? Or is it more about these connections and continuities this relation are?
Right. It's about what gives our lives meaning, what makes us who we are in a deeper sense.
So shifting the focus from a rigid notion of self to the web of relationships and experiences
Exactly.
that connect us through time.
Yeah, it's a different way of looking at it.
It would be a huge change in perspective.
It would, and it has implications for everything.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, how we think about responsibility,
Okay.
our relationships with others, even our own future selves.
So if we prioritize relation R, what does it mean to be loyal to yourself over time?
Right. What obligations do you have to your future self?
Especially if that future self might hold different values or make different choices.
Exactly. It's like we're expanding the circle of what we consider self.
To include all these past and future versions of ourselves?
With all their complexities and inconsistencies.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is, and it connects to another fascinating aspect of Parfit's work,
Okay.
our relationship with time.
Okay, so he talks about the bias toward the near,
Yeah, that human tendency to prioritize the present over the future.
even when it might be against our long-term interests.
Right, we've all been there.
Yeah, putting off that difficult task, indulging in that extra slice of cake.
Guilty as charged.
But Parfit goes deeper, asking whether this bias is inherently irrational.
He does.
He introduces the bias toward the future as a counterpoint.
Right.
The idea that we might care more about a future experience simply because it's in the future.
Even if it's not as good as something we could have right now.
So it's like we're caught in this push and pull between our present selves and our future selves.
With all these biases shaping our decisions.
This is making my head spin.
It's complex stuff.
It really is. So then there are the ethical implications.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
If we accept this more fluid, less rigid view of the self, does that change how we think about morality and justice?
It has to, right? I mean, if the me who made a mistake in the past isn't truly the same me as I am now, how can I be held responsible?
Right.
It raises profound questions about the foundations of our moral and legal systems.
Yeah.
And it circles back to relation R. If what matters is the connections and continuities, how do we apply concepts like blame, guilt, or even forgiveness?
These are huge questions.
They are, and Parfit doesn't necessarily give us all the answers.
So he's more interested in making us think.
Exactly. He's a master of pushing us to question our assumptions.
And those challenges extend beyond individual morality to the realm of social justice.
Right. How do we think about fairness and distribution if the lines between individuals aren't as clear as we thought?
So Parfit's reductionist view suggests that focusing solely on individual rights and responsibilities might be too simplistic,
We need to consider the interconnectedness of our lives.
and how our actions impact others, both in the present and in the future.
It's a more holistic view.
So instead of seeing ourselves as isolated individuals,
Right.
we should view ourselves as part of this vast web of relationships and interdependencies.
Exactly. It's a shift from me thinking to we thinking.
And that broader perspective could lead to a more nuanced and compassionate approach to social policy.
It could change how we think about everything, from wealth inequality to climate change.
It's almost like Parfit is giving us a new lens.
A new way of seeing the world.
Yeah, one that reveals the interconnectedness of everything.
And challenges us to act accordingly.
Parfit's work is certainly complex and challenging,
It is.
but incredibly rewarding to explore.
Absolutely.
It raises so many important questions about who we are, how we should act, and what it means to live a good life.
He's giving us the tools to think about these big questions in a new way.
So as we delve deeper into the ethical and societal implications of Parfit's work, it's clear that we're only scratching the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
So like we've been on this incredible journey with Parfit.
Yeah, a real mind bender.
Starting with, challenging the self-interest theory.
Right.
And now we're like in this vast landscape of questions about personal identity and morality and like the structure of society.
He really covers it all.
He does so. For our listener
who's
been with us on this deep dive, what's the most significant takeaway?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I know.
There are so many.
What's the one idea that might shift their perspective or like spark further exploration?
Okay. I would say letting go of the idea of a fixed, unchanging self.
Okay.
That can really open up new possibilities for how we see ourselves in the world.
It's like a more expansive view.
Yeah, and a more compassionate one, I think.
Yeah. It's not about erasing individual responsibility.
Right.
But it's understanding that we're all part of something much larger.
Exactly. We're all connected.
Parfit's work has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It has.
So if we're not these fixed, unchanging selves,
right,
what does that mean for our responsibilities to our future selves?
Oh, that's a good one.
How does it change how we view relationships and commitments?
Yeah. Are we the same person who made those commitments?
Right.
It's tricky.
And what are the broader implications for society as a whole?
Huge question.
Huge question.
These are things that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries.
Yeah.
And Parfit's work adds a whole new dimension.
Absolutely. So it's been a challenging, but ultimately rewarding exploration of Parfit's ideas.
I agree.
For our listener who's ready to delve even deeper, where would you recommend they go from here?
Well, there's no better place to start than with the source itself.
Okay, so Reasons and Persons.
That's the one. The book.
It's dense.
Yeah.
But it's really worth the effort.
It's full of those thought experiments.
Yeah, he's the master.
And intricate arguments.
It's a real workout for the brain.
It is. And for those who might want a bit more guidance,
there
are a ton of articles and lectures.
Oh, yeah. Tons of resources out there.
Even podcasts.
Of course.
Dedicated to unpacking Parfit's work.
It's a whole field of study.
It really is.
But a fascinating one.
So to our listener, we encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into these mysteries of existence.
That's what it's all about. Derek Parfit's work is a great place to start.
A great starting point.
But the journey of philosophical discovery never really ends.
It's a lifelong pursuit.
It is. Who knows what other mind-bending ideas are out there?
Exactly. Keep searching.
Happy exploring.
That's it for this deep dive.